little passage from an article about fundraising, and the article is called "Fundraising is Not a Dirty Word." So here's a little paragraph. When you convene organizers, nonprofit staff members, and activists together, fundraising is rarely the center of passionate debate. Though an important component of most organizing efforts in the United States, fundraising is usually perceived by activists as our nasty compromise within an evil capitalist structure. As long as we relegate fundraising to a dirty chore, better handled by grant writers and development directors and organizers, we miss an opportunity to create stepping stones toward community-based economies. So this article, it's really interesting take on fundraising, and it talks about how a lot of folks, that do this work, organizers, activists, traditionally are kind of like shy away from fundraising. It's like the least part of the work that they like to do. But at Clean Air, what we like to think about is it's an opportunity to further our mission, to further our membership, and allow the members to actively, take part in fundraising, and as well as our staff members as well. Like it's spread throughout the organization as well. And grassroots fundraising also means many different sources of fundraising of funds come into the organization. And so we're thinking about the many, we're strength in numbers, and a diverse number of sources of the funding coming in. And we'll talk a little bit about why that's important. And I think we want to go to the next slide there, Bridge. Yeah, so we've come up with kind of like some framing and some principles about how we fundraise. And the number one thing is, money does not drive the organization's strategy, and it only affects the speed of our work. And what that means is that the amount of money that we get, or who the money comes from, doesn't determine how we do our work. Like how we do our work is from our mission. We organize working class communities, and we develop leaders. And I don't have our mission statement down like as a sentence yet, I'm sorry, but we basically, we do what we're the way we're going to do it, regardless of where our funding comes from. So we're core to our mission. It affects the speed of our work, of course, because if we have more resources, we can do our works faster, or we can do more of it, but it doesn't affect what we want to do as part of our mission. And how we raise money is important because it is part of organizing, and it's not seen as a separate thing. It's one and the same, with the core part of our work. And then the other part is it's kind of viewed traditionally, like mentioned in the article, as something like it's a specialized thing from, say, a development director or executive director, or like a board finance committee. And we miss the opportunity to engage more folks in supporting the work. And even though many of our members are not wealthy, member giving matters. And it really matters because we talked about, the diversity of funding, that we don't have one source of funding that's dominant, that is going to try to influence what Clean Air works on, and what our members need to be done to give health and justice in their communities, because it's so spread out. So we're going to do a little exercise here. And the one thing that this is the next slide here, is the communities are in control of the organization. So we're a member-based organization. Members decide who can, who's going to be on our board of directors. They decide where the direction of our campaigns, like where we need to direct our work, if there's a new campaign that comes from our membership. So, and those are the folks that are donating. So that decision making is grounded in our members. So that's really important to us. And then this, yeah, like it says, the member. Sorry, that, yeah, I think I covered that. That's fine. So let's do a little exercise here before we go onto that slide, Bridge. It's okay. It's okay, because I'm going to follow our agenda and think about, so with the folks that are here, and if you haven't been, organizing with Clean Air for a long time, that's okay. But just maybe think about something that you did in any of the organizing that you've done with any other organizations. So think about the work that you've done with Clean Air, and think about a time where you've had to take a particularly hard or critical stance in public, or have had to do an action that's controversial. Does anybody have any thoughts or examples of that they would like to share? I know we have a small group tonight. And I think Sue keeps trying to join us, and I'm admitting her, and there she is. Okay, so maybe Emily, did you have in your history of organizing with Clean Air an example that we're talking about, like one of those times where we've had to do something hard? And
yeah, I think about when we were organizing for the Tonawanda Coke site to be fully put into the Superfund program. We had to really put pressure on the DEC and call out the governor as well, because the governor appoints the DEC commissioner. And we had a pretty tense action where we created a giant puppet of the head of Honeywell International and made a giant cardboard copy of the commissioner of the DEC and put on a play, sang the Muppet song. There's a video somewhere, but that like really made people angry, but it also was strategic for us to get our message across and show that we were really meaning what we were saying. And if we had taken money from the governor's office, or if we took money from a funder that didn't like that kind of stuff, we wouldn't have been able to use that tactic, and then we ultimately wouldn't have won our campaign.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Emily. And that's exactly the point we wanted to make by that exercise, is that it is controversial. It's a little scary. But we did it, and you did it with your campaign, because it was necessary, and it was a step that we needed to do to get the win that the organization ended up getting with in that campaign. So thank you, Emily, for sharing that. And just our next point before we go on to talk about what we've learned about money. Money is important. We need the resources to do our work. And it is about money, but it's also about building our impact and building our relationships with people that are going to take action. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next slide there, Bridge, and then Emily, I'm going to pass it to Emily. Where do our beliefs about money come from?
Yeah. So all of our experiences with money are all very different. Our beliefs about money, our experiences with money are shaped by our backgrounds, things that have happened in our individual lives, but also in larger systems of oppression that we're actively fighting against. And so like Chris said, money is a fact of life, and by us ignoring it, we are not that isn't a powerful thing for us to dismantle the systems that are oppressing us, but we do need to acknowledge that we're all shaped, and our experiences with money are all very differently based on our race, our class, our gender, ability, and all of the intersecting ways that oppression takes hold on our lives and our world. And it's really important that we talk honestly about that. And we know that in our dominant culture in the United States, that the United States was formed around the kidnapping and enslavement of Black people from the continent of Africa, that it was settled on stolen land from the indigenous people across Turtle Island, and that the wealth that was built was built on the exploited labor of enslaved Africans, as well as disenfranchised immigrants and poor people. All of that built the foundation of wealth for the owning white class, and shaped the American economy and our system of governance. And we still feel that in our laws and how we think about money and how banking systems work and who has access to what today. So we also know that time and time again, Black, Indigenous, and other people of color have been systematically shut out of the workforce, the financial system, land and home ownership, and have had to deal with generations and generations of environmental racism. We also know that poor and working class white people have been chewed up by rich bosses who have also exploited our labor and our bodies, and that we've been given crumbs and with the thought, their thought, that they can extract our solidarity with BIPOC communities by promising us a ticket at the middle and upper class table. And then also scapegoating Black, Indigenous, and people of color and immigrants, and tearing us all apart. All of that can be true at the same time. All of these things have exceptions. There are success stories and renegades, but overall, this is how the American capitalist economy has been formed and maintained in this country. We can and we should spend a lot more time talking about these specific histories and the lessons that we can learn and all of this shaping, but we're not going to do that tonight. I'm going to put this document into the chat that really breaks down class breakdowns, and it is a really interesting way to reflect on your own experience, and really think about class as we're doing our work. Great. So we said a lot of things, talked a lot about history and talked like in broad strokes, right? But what does it actually mean for us as human beings, as organizers, as people who want to change the world? So I want to share a little bit about my own experiences and beliefs about money and how these different systems have shaped how I show up, especially in how I show up with fundraising for causes that I believe in and organizations I believe in. I grew up working class. My family was, I would say, working class, on the lower end of the working class bracket. My family, my parents owned their home, and in a weird, warped way, in their minds, that made us middle class. But that was, very much not true. We often had bologna sandwiches for dinner because there was nothing else to eat. Sometimes the only time we would eat was at school. And also, we never talked about money. Both of my parents worked. They worked in different ways. My dad worked at a factory in an office. My mom did, different part-time work. And I have one of my sisters has disabilities, and so she was always home to take care of her. And so there was this idea that there was never actually enough, but you weren't supposed to complain about it because people were working really hard, and you should be grateful for what you have, right? I was also told that the way that we were going to get out of living day to day, and the way that I was going to make a better life for my family, was by going to college, becoming a teacher, and moving out of Buffalo. That was it. I did one of those things. I went to college, did not become a teacher, and I certainly have not moved out of Buffalo. But there were all of these ideas that were braided in there around, if you work hard enough, you can overcome anything, that education will get you out of poverty, that everything goes back to your family, and that you cannot ask for help because everybody else is struggling, right? Um, there was a time in my life where I was doing some illegal things in order to survive. And I did those things because I had to. And I did them because I didn't feel like I could ask my parents for help, even for $20 for a half a week's worth of groceries for my partner and our baby. That wasn't an option for me. So when I came into the movement and doing organizing work, and then I joined the board of Clean Air, and fundraising was a big part of our work and of our values, that for all of the reasons that we've talked about tonight. And that was terrifying for me because for me, when you ask someone for money, that money came with strings, that it was a burden on another person, that they didn't have enough, but they're probably too polite to say no, or they just won't ever talk to me again, right? Because I was asking for too much. I was being ungrateful for what I had. And it's taken me a very long time to really be clear about what those messages are, where they came from, and how they have gotten in the way of me doing my organizing work and doing the fundraising work that I need to do to fund our organizing work, right? It doesn't serve anyone for me to be in a shame spiral. And also, it doesn't help anyone for me to feel like I'm by myself, right? So when we think about our experiences with money, we're all coming into it in different ways. Your story may be different from my story, but there may be pieces in it that maybe you can connect with. But what we're going to do, and this is like ongoing work. I've been doing organizing work for over a decade, and I'm just this year, like, I had to sit down and say, I really have to think about my relationship to money, because I really want us to win. I really want to live in the world where we're all free. And this is a small piece of it. So what I'd like for us to do is to get out a piece of paper or a blank sheet on your computer. And we're going to spend about 5 minutes writing out, what are the stories that your family told about money? Think about the ways that race, class, and gender impacted your beliefs about money or your experiences with money. um, and think about a time when maybe you didn't have enough resources, or money, and what did that feel like and what happened. We don't want to go too deep, because we don't want to get to the bowels of our of our trauma, but we do want to be able to feel what it has felt like, what has shaped our ideas about money. So we're going to give about 5 minutes to